Shin is an ugly, pathetic loser who got his miserable life ended by Bus-kun. However, he's reborn as a god in a new world filled with demons and he has to protect it. But before that, one day he heads to the forest to hunt chickens with his magic, and while at it, he remembers his past life on Earth in Japan, but he doesn't remember how he died. He returns home to his grandfather, Merlin, a highly skilled magician who has taught him all he knows about magic. Just then, Shin spots Granny Melita and Michelle approaching from afar. On getting closer, Melita, a friend of Merlin, scolds him for engaging in a dangerous activity like hunting, but Shin assures her it's not dangerous. However, Melita remains unconvinced and tells him that he's just an 8-year-old who should rather be watching cartoons. 2 years later, Shin is now 10 years of age, and Merlin feels like it's time for him to experience demon hunting, so he decides to take him up on a cliff. On getting to the top of the cliff, Merlin tries to find a demon by spreading his magic power across the area, but he warns Shin not to try this at home as it requires having total control of his magic to be able to do it. However, Merlin is shocked when Shin spreads his magic just the same as his, and immediately feels the presence of every creature in the forest. He soon senses something sinister lurking deep in the forest, which Merlin identifies as the magic power of a demon. Without hesitation, they hurry to the location and encounter a ferocious demon. Merlin warns him not to engage, but he doesn't listen and immediately draws his sword. He then charges at the demon while summoning ultrasonic vibrations and using his enchanted boots. He speeds toward the demon, killing it in one strike. Meanwhile, Merlin can't believe his eyes and thinks that he's watching some Hollywood blockbuster. Later that night, Merlin narrates Shin's feat to Melita and Michelle, and Melita wonders who the heck the boy is, as his rapid mastery of magic is extraordinary. The next day, after a grueling training session with Michelle, Merlin interrupts them, demanding to talk with Shin. Merlin soon reveals that he is not his real grandfather, and apologizes for keeping it a secret from him all this while. However, Shin tells him he already knows and assures him that he is content with him as a grandfather, causing Merlin to leak salty water from his eyes. Fast forward 5 years, it's Shin's 15th birthday, and Merlin hosts a party to celebrate him. His uncle, Dizzyam, asks him what he intends to do with his useless life now that he's an adult, and Shin expresses a desire to visit the nearby town. Their conversation is soon interrupted by Christina and Siegfried, friends of the family, and Christina suggests Shin to join the Royal Order and become a demon hunter. A chubby-looking mustache guy, Tom Haig, tells Shin that demon hunting is a career and that there is a whole demon society that hunts demons and collects rewards for their work. Siegfried chimes in too and tells Shin he could become a gear dealer and help people look like Mr. Olympia with all the gear he could supply them. A few minutes later, the whole group teleports to the wilderness to test Shin's magic, and Merlin orders Shin to cast a spell as though it were his final exam. Shin visualizes the process of combustion and immediately casts a powerful spell that causes a massive explosion, creating a deep hole in the ground. Shocked by how powerful he is, Dizzyam suggests that exposing Shin to the world would be dangerous, as other countries might seek to recruit him for their armies, but rather recommends that they enroll him in a magic academy in his own country, where he can make friends. However, Merlin is skeptical as he feels that Dizzyam is being deceitful and intends to have Shin in his country so he can exploit him for military purposes, but Dizzyam assures him that his country is a perfect place for Shin. Dizzyam immediately warns that admission into the academy is based on merits and cannot be influenced by even a noble like him. Just then, Shin wonders who he is, and Dizzyam, feeling the moment was right, reveals that he's the king of Earlside, shocking him as he had only known him as his uncle all his life. Christina introduces herself as a royal guard escorting the majesty, and then Siegfried goes on to introduce himself as a magician with the court magic division, and Michelle finally introduces himself as a retired knight commander of the order. That moment, Shin has a reality check, realizing that he has been scammed all his life. Shin asks Dizzyam why a king like him would be hanging out with old grumpy Merlin. This prompts Dizzyam to recount a fairy tale about his life. He tells him Merlin once defeated a powerful demon in his country after the demon had wiped out the whole city. At that time, he was just the crown prince who attended the Magic Academy, and while all the students of the Magic Academy were enrolled to fight the demon, he also volunteered. However, in the heat of battle, just when the demon was about to isekai him, Merlin and Melita saved his worthless soul. After they defeated the demon, they were held up as heroes who delivered the people from a national crisis, and ever since, he and Merlin have been such good friends. Some months later, Merlin and Melita take Shin to the capital to enroll in the Magic Academy. They arrive at a mansion and are welcomed by a staff of butlers and maids. They even call Shin Master. This formality and politeness takes Shin by surprise. One evening, Shin decides to take a stroll around the city. He soon stumbles upon 3 ugly idiots harassing a girl, but he interrupts them and tells them that they should scram because he is the MC. However, the dudes think he's an idiot and decide to help him by shutting his stinking mouth. However, just as one charges at him with a punch, Shin dodges it and flings him like a useless towel. Another one tries to attack too, but he also receives the same VIP treatment. Upon seeing this, the last one draws his dagger and launches it at Shin, but Shin hits the dagger, breaking it and giving him a knockout punch that sends him unconscious. Following this, the mysterious lady hurries towards him and thanks him for saving her. Just then, another lady approaches him to thank him also, but the loser is more concerned about the massive plot before him. Later on, the ladies introduce themselves as Maria von Messina and Cicely von Claude. Maria tells them that if she could use her magic, she would have beaten the useless goons. This prompts Shin to ask if they are students of the Magic Academy. Maria replies that they will be, if they pass the entrance exam, so Shin realizes that they are in a similar situation as him. He tells them that he is also enrolling in the academy, but Cicely tells Shin that she thought he was a student training in night school. But Shin corrects them and tells them that they will all be going to the Magic Academy together if they pass the entrance exam. Maria then makes a handshake deal with Shin that she'll marry him if he scores higher. On the day of the entrance exam, Shin is stunned by the number of students who also came to take the test, and promises to himself to do his best so he can see Cicely again. While looking at the notice board, he is approached by an arrogant face who asks him to step aside and grabs his shoulder. Reflexively, Shin twists his arm, causing the boy to scream in pain. The boy introduces himself as Kurt, heir of Count Reitzberg, and continues to bully Shin verbally. Suddenly, another boy appears, warning Kurt that the school's rules do not permit throwing authority around and that doing so is disrespectful to the royal family. Kurt, recognizing the boy, bows his head in shame and storms away angrily. The boy introduces himself to Shin as August von Earlshide, shocking Shin, who realizes he is the king's son. Shin then exclaims that since Dizium is his uncle, that makes them cousins, to which August laughs and tells them that they will make good company. Following this, the students start the examination, and during the magic practicals, they are asked to cast their best spell at a target. A random dude with zero fashion sense starts casting a weak fireball, but Shin, who was eager to see his peers' abilities, is unimpressed. As he wonders if this is how weak his peers are, the students display their useless magic abilities one after the other, and the instructor is impressed with these, but Shin wonders why an instructor would be impressed with crappy abilities like that. The instructor soon notices Shin's discomfort and asks him if something is wrong. Then she tells him it's his turn and reminds him to keep his power down to avoid destroying the training ground, making Shin wonder what exactly his uncle must have told her. Just then, Shin summons a blue flame without chanting a spell, amazing everyone as he launches the flame at the target, destroying it instantly and covering everyone in the dust. The instructor can't believe her eyes and screams in shock, but Shin tells her he was actually holding back just enough to hit the right spot. The next day, the results of the exams are posted, and Shin and August gain entrance to the academy. Afterward, Shin collects his uniform from a young lady who informs him it is enchanted with defensive magic, and that he is the top scorer in the examination, so he needs to prepare a speech for the entrance ceremony. This news shocks him, and Cicely falls deeper in love with him upon hearing Shin is a top scorer. In a gloomy dark room, a villain is born. Kurt fumes with anger when he learns that Shin, the guy who cleaned the floor with his ass, got the top score, and he vows to make Shin pay. Meanwhile, at the same time, Shin nullifies the enchantment on his uniform and tries to re-enchant it. After modifying the spell, he screams in shock as he discovers that it actually worked. Melita is shocked and suddenly barges into the room, wondering why he screamed like that. At the entrance ceremony the next day, the king and the nobles grace the event, and Shin is called to give the speech to the new students. Hearing his name, Maria and Cicely become shocked as they realize that he is the grandson of Merlin and Melita. So they approach him later to tell him that a numbskull has been harassing Cicely despite her repeated refusals. Shin becomes angry and demands to know who is responsible, and then Kurt arrives, furious at Cicely for talking to Shin. Maria immediately identifies Kurt as the fool harassing Cicely. Kurt grabs Cicely's arm, but Shin smacks Kurt's filthy hands off Cicely, and threatens to beat the hell out of him if he is not careful. Kurt claims that Cicely is his fiancée. Cicely denies it and says that she doesn't want an ugly face like him, which is why she always has declined his proposals. Upon hearing this, Kurt threatens to get her father fired due to his father's higher social standing. At that instant, August interrupts, reminding Kurt that using his family's authority to bully people is an insult to the royal family, and then he tells him to get the heck out of his face. Kurt becomes ashamed and runs off immediately. Afterwards, the girls thank the prince for his timely intervention. Shin invites them to his house, making Maria excited as she thinks she'll get to meet her idols, Merlin and Melita. Prince August's escorts appear and offer to accompany the prince to the house. On getting to Shin's house, he introduces his classmates to his grandparents and explains Cicely's situation, demanding that they help override the enchantment on her uniform to protect her. Melita tells Cicely that Shin is determined to keep her safe, and overriding the enchantment will make her uniform a national treasure, just like Shin's, stunning everyone. However, Cicely declares she isn't worthy of such an honor and apologizes for taking advantage of Shin's kindness. As she storms out in tears, Melita stops her and says that if she had accepted immediately, she would have thrown her out, but she appreciates her honesty and promises to help. A few minutes later, everyone watches in amazement as Shin overwrites the enchantment on Cicely's uniform, but he warns her that she still needs to be careful as the protection doesn't extend to the areas not covered by the uniform. The next day, at the Reedsburg estate, Kurt's father returns furious after being summoned to the palace. He calls on Kurt and scolds him for throwing his weight around at the Magic Academy, knowing it's forbidden, but the idiot arrogantly states that they are special and he can do as he likes. Suddenly, Kurt becomes aggressive, frightening his father, but the old man knocks him unconscious and orders that he be locked in his room. The next day at the academy, the team discusses Kurt's absence from school and Shin asks why the dude behaves like a spoiled, arrogant bully, using his family name to intimidate everyone. A weakling, wrongly named Thor, mentions that Kurt started acting differently after he began visiting Mr. Strom's lab, a transferred magic teacher who claims to be exiled from the Empire. Meanwhile, at the Reedsburg estate, Mr. Strom visits Kurt's home and Kurt's mother, in tears, informs him of Kurt's recent erratic behavior, completely unaware that Strom is the evil mastermind behind it. Grinning in delight, Strom decides to have a word with Kurt, and as he enters Kurt's room, he finds Kurt hugging the ground. He approaches him, reminding him that he is special and casts a hypnotic spell that turns his eyes red immediately. Strom then orders him to teach anyone standing in his way a lesson. Later that day at the academy, as the team walks from class, Shin suddenly detects a sinister dark energy lurking around. So he decides to search for the source of energy and he spots a demon-possessed Kurt with red, menacing eyes. Kurt immediately attacks, launching dragonfire flames at them, but Shin intervenes just in time, casting a spell that absorbs the flames. Shin informs the others to channel magic energy into their uniforms so as not to get hurt by the flames. Realizing his flames were absorbed, Kurt becomes infuriated and undergoes a partial demon transformation. So Shin immediately orders August to get the team to safety, stating he will handle Kurt alone. As Shin readies himself to fight, Kurt charges at him, launching a powerful explosion, but Shin leaps out of the way, evading the attack, and Kurt charges again. However, this time, Shin summons blue flames and fires at him, hitting the target and stopping Kurt in his tracks. Struggling to get up, Kurt tells Shin that he will take him along to hell even if it's the last thing he does, surprising Shin that a demon can actually talk. Kurt suddenly launches another powerful explosion combined with lightning, and Shin immediately jumps high to evade the attack. He then summons his lightning of heaven, which electrocutes Kurt. However, Shin realizes that Kurt's body is getting damaged from the attack. Shin realizes that Kurt hasn't fully transformed into a demonoid, so he reasons that there ought to be a way to bring him back. Just then, Kurt launches a barrage of explosive attacks at Shin, but he manages to evade all of them, and then charges at Kurt. However, he suddenly stops when he realizes that Kurt is gathering magical power into himself to create a massive explosion which is strong enough to blow up the whole academy. As the ground begins to tremble, Shin casts a spell, summoning a glowing blade immediately, and using his enchanted boots, he charges at the demon at incredible speed, impaling his head and causing red juice to ooze out from his body. However, Shin feels terrible that he had to end him, but he had no other option anyway. Just then, the team hurries toward him and Cicely checks on him to ensure he is fine. Meanwhile, Strom stands atop the school building, feeling satisfied with his experiment, but he considers that Shin could be a potential problem. At the same time, Shin informs the team that someone likely orchestrated Kurt's demon possession. Later on in the academy, Strom is visited by the Disgusting Kingdom's Security Bureau investigators, and they notice Strom's precise movements despite his blindness, prompting them to ask if he uses sensory magic to aid his sight. Then Strom narrates the boring story of how he was born into a noble family and beaten out in a power struggle. He was then exiled and attacked by his family members, which resulted in his blindness. So the investigators ask about his study group and the incident with Kurt, and they also request that he join the specialists examining Kurt's demonized body. Strom follows them to the security force parade ground, and on entering the building, he asks about Kurt's body, but he soon discovers it's an ambush as armed guards surround him. The investigator reveals that Strom made a mistake earlier by mentioning Kurt's name as the demon, even though that information has not been released to the public. Strom laughs like a deranged clown, realizing it is a trap, and confesses to conducting experiments on people. Disgusted by this, the investigator orders the knights to seize him, and Strom immediately tries to use magic to escape, but the guards overpower him. Meanwhile, as Shin and his squad head home, they experience an explosion that blows up the walls of a nearby building. They rush out to see what caused the explosion and find Strom standing over the investigator's body. The investigator warns August to run, informing him that Strom is behind the demonized incidents. Upon hearing this, Shin becomes angry and he charges towards Strom immediately, unleashing a powerful blue flame at Strom, but Strom shields himself using magic. Shin attacks again with his magic glowing sword, but Strom evades all his attacks easily. Strom suddenly begins to float in the air and launches red lightning at Shin, but Shin dodges the attack and pulls out a move from Avatar: The Last Airbender. However, Strom leaps into the air and evades the attack. Shin, realizing how strong his opponent is, immediately uses his enchanted boots to airjet at incredible speed and slashes through Strom while also burning him with his blue flame. This makes Strom mad and he instantly creates a large ball of explosion that knocks Shin down. However, his eye patch breaks, revealing his red demonic eyes, shocking Shin, who is surprised to see that he is also a demon. He quickly fires a powerful blue flame at him again, but Strom effortlessly shrugs it off, and he starts to taunt Shin, calling him the useless grandson of an old drunkard. However, Shin surprises Strom with a sudden powerful attack of high heat rays when he's not expecting it, and he gets severely burned. Strom screams out in pain before disappearing in a massive explosion. Shin immediately uses his search magic to look for him but is unable to find Strom. Just then, a disgusting strange man walks in and commends him for defeating a demon of that rank. Is this the last of Strom, or did he vanish for a moment? Find out in the next part. If you love this recap and want the next part, comment part 2. Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting recaps like this.